What's up, guys? Welcome back to another. Let me turn off the fan real quick. Alright, guys, welcome back to another episode. It is about 1 p.m. right now. Once again, this Airbnb is directly under a flight path, so if you heard that, then that's why. It's about 1 p.m. right now. We're gonna get some good food, and then I have no idea where I want to play yet, but we'll just figure it out as we go. So, as much as I'd like to try a new food place, I think today I just want to go to the Modern Vegan. I'm craving it, and it's right next door, so let's go eat, and then I'll figure out where we're gonna play next. Still have no idea where I want to play yet, but I'll just hit up Poker Atlas while I'm in the car. Like I said, my Airbnb is right under a flight path. Alright guys, we are here in the Wynn self-parking structure. I was looking at poker rooms on Poker Atlas, and the ones I hadn't been to either didn't really offer that great games, or they had terrible reviews and were kind of far. So I'm just gonna go to a place that I know and that I love playing at, which is the Wynn. It's always been my favorite place to play low stakes. The 1-3 game has a max buy-in of 500, and it does actually play that big as well. People don't just buy in short stacked. A couple tips for you guys if you ever play here. One is to route to the self-parking structure on your phone if you don't know where it is. If you route to the Wynn directly, it'll take you to a separate area. So just route to specifically the Wynn self-parking structure, and the parking's free, which is nice. And then the second tip is, well, let me show you. Alright guys, so when you get into the parking structure from that side, you would think you would go this way to go to the casino, and that's what I did for several sessions. But the thing is, that actually leads you into a different casino area, and then I would walk all the way around, and then I would get into where the poker room is. When you should just cut across the parking structure entrance to that building over there, and the poker room will be right there. So I used to walk in a big circle, and then I figured it out, and now I know better. So hopefully none of you make that mistake, but yeah, I'm glad I got to make it for you guys. Once I get to the poker room, I pretty much get a seat right away. I buy in for $500, and for the first interesting hand, I pick up King Queen of Hearts in early position. I make it $12 and only get called by the big blind. We are going heads up to a flop, which comes 5 Ace 10 with 2 hearts. So pretty good flop for our hand. We've got a royal flush draw actually. The big blind checks it over to me, and I decide to check back. I have the nut nothing, and me having 2 hearts, especially the 2 highest hearts, make it less likely he can call with something worse. So I checked back, and we are taking a turn card, which is the Ace of Spades. The big blind checks once again, and I decided to take a stab at it now, although I think a check back probably would have been better for the same reasons that I checked on the flop, and I bet 10. My opponent unfortunately makes the call, so we're going to a river card now, and it is another ace. It's the Ace of Clubs. So we have King High here, and the big blind checks to me. I don't know. I could bet or I could check, but I ended up checking, and he had pocket 4s. So he's going to take this one down, and we're going to lose a small pot for the first hand. All right, guys. This next hand is going to be a pretty interesting one, not because of the hand analysis itself, but more so what happens at the table. So we've got pocket queens here in the small blind. There are 3 limps, and I decide to make it $20 in the big blind. Only the limper and the button makes the call, so we're going to a flop heads up. And this player seemed like he was new. It didn't really seem like he played poker a whole ton before this, so we're going to keep that in mind. The flop is really good for us, guys. It comes 5 Queen 5 with 2 diamonds, so we've got top boat here. And yeah, I have what pretty much should be the nuts. And I decided to bet 15 here, which I don't absolutely hate, but usually if you flop a monster here and you have the board so locked up, a check is going to be the better option. But small bet can't be horrible either, and my opponent actually ends up min-raising here, so yeah, obviously happy I bet, and I'm not going to raise here and scare him off his hand. I'm just going to keep letting him bet if he wants to, and we're going to a turn card. It is the 3 of diamonds completing the flush, so could be good, could be bad. A large portion of his calling range is probably going to be flush draws, but then again, he could be calling with any 2 cards just based on the kind of player he is. So yeah, maybe this card kills action. My opponent actually tries to bet $100 out of turn, and it was pretty clear to me, at least in my opinion, that this was supposed to be an angle from him, and unfortunately, this is something you just see very commonly. Obviously, depending on the situation, it could be more impactful. And once the dealer corrects him, he takes the chips back, and obviously, I'm just going to check it here because if you actually declare an action out of turn or try to actually bet out of turn, then that action will still stand if action gets checked to you. So I checked, and then at this point, he tried to check back, which makes it pretty obvious to me that this was supposed to be like, kind of an angle bet out of turn to get me to check. And it seems pretty clear to me that he has maybe some kind of middling pair or something like that, or just some kind of marginal hand that doesn't want to see a bet. So that's why he did this. And when he tries to check back, then everyone at the table kind of goes like, whoa, you cannot do that. Like, your bet still stands. And the dealer was actually going to like call the floor over, like over all the commotion, and then try to get a ruling. But the people at the table kind of like were like, this is a very obvious situation. Like, this is something that the bet just stands. Like, that's the ruling. So
whatever the rule is, I accept it.
okay.
Yeah. It's not what is the rule? It's 100%.
It's just because people could angle if I don't blame you. Yeah,
it's okay.
It's fine.
If it's a rule, no problem.
We were just mainly stopping the dealer.
Yeah. No problem. It's okay.
Yeah, do you really have to call the floor for this?
It's pretty clear and obvious.
Right?
Yeah, no need to call the floor over, and my opponent's bet of 100 still stands. And this is where I make a pretty poor decision, guys. I just flat called the $100 in the moment. I missed a very obvious min click here. At the time, I missed it because I was just like, okay, let me just like not show too much strength in this scenario. But I think in this specific case, with everything that happened, it just looks like he's weak, which means that me raising doesn't necessarily look strong. And if I just min click it here, it just looks like I'm trying to get him off his hands since he tried to check back. So I could have probably squeezed out a little bit more value with the raise here. And we're going to a river card, which is the 9 of clubs. And at this point, action's on me, out of position, and I am very doubtful that he's going to bet if I check to him given the action. So I decided to bet small here, and I made it $100. And he ends up folding, and, I don't want to be super results-oriented or something, but even if I didn't know he was going to fold this, I think my bet of 100 is still a little too big just based on the action. I think I should like really size down here and make it like 70 or something like that just to squeeze out that bit of value. And of course, that is as played. Of course, I wish I had just raised on the turn, but that is a hand for you guys. Pretty interesting series of events. And yeah, still definitely happy to have won a sizable pot. In the next hand, I get dealt King Queen offsuit, and there's a raise to 15 from early position. This player was pretty strong, and I was pretty sure he actually belonged in 5-5, and it actually turned out he did end up moving to the 5-5 table afterwards. So yeah, he was definitely a strong player, and we'll keep that in mind. Anyways, I make the call with King Queen in position, and we're going to a flop heads up. It comes Queen 10 Queen, easy game when you flop trips, and once he checks it over to me, I decide to check back here just for deception. The turn card comes the deuce of diamonds, and my opponent this time decides to bet $20. I called pretty quickly, but I think I missed an opportunity to raise here. I'm probably going to be raising here some of the time with like draws and stuff after checking the flop. The river is another deuce, and yeah, pretty much shouldn't have changed anything. And this time my opponent checks. We're going to go for a tiny bit of value here. Doesn't seem like he's super strong, so I once again bet a third pot. I make it $25. He calls pretty quickly, and unsurprisingly, we end up winning the hand. So not a super interesting one, but it seems to kind of follow this theme of a lot of my hands where I play kind of passively and miss some value. This next hand's a pretty fun one, and it's a situation I won't get really involved in too much because it is blind versus blind. So it starts off with me getting dealt ace-7 offsuit in the big blind. Action folds to the player in the small blind, and he's a very young, aggressive guy and likes to bet really large. And in chop situations, I always say up to you to the other person. I don't mind playing since I am there to play poker, but at the same time, I don't mind chopping as well since the rake. So I say up to you, and he wants to play and raises to $11. I'm definitely going to play my ace here, so I make the call. The flop is pretty good for us. It's 6 Queen 7 rainbow, so we've got middle pair with top kicker. and my opponent continues with a bet of $20. Obviously going to make the call here. The turn card brings the king of diamonds, and my opponent does not slow down. He bets 55 into a pot of 62, which is almost a pot-sized bet. Given that this player was betting large throughout the session, I don't see this as being like an indication of a super strong hand or anything, and I could clearly tell my opponent wasn't afraid to put people in tough spots. So I actually do decide to make the call here. I simply think this opponent is going to be weighted towards bluffing a little more than average, and if he had a queen, I think sometimes he would be checking the turn for pot control and try to get to showdown. So yeah, not really buying the story just yet, and we're gonna go to a river card, guys. It is the 9 of clubs. Probably doesn't change much. Obviously, like 10-8 gets there, 9-8 makes a pair, but I don't think that's super relevant in this situation. I'm more so thinking that my opponent is weak and just trying to get me off my hand. And he ends up actually checking here, so that's a pretty good sign. I think he's giving up. And we do have showdown value. I could check back, but who knows? There is a chance he could have some kind of random pair higher than mine, maybe like a random 9. The point is, I was pretty certain he'd fold to a bet, and he had about a pot-sized bet left, so I just put him all in for 175 or so, and he ends up folding. We end up winning this one, luckily, and obviously not a super common situation since I don't really play blind versus blind a ton. But let me know what you guys think. I think this was kind of a weird hand, so I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on it. Okay, guys, I'm adding on to the voiceover because while editing, I realized that a shove is probably not super necessary given my read that he's probably weak. There's no reason for me to risk 175 when I can easily just bet like 80 or something. You know, at the time, sometimes you're just like, oh, I have a pot-sized bet behind, I'll shove. So that's what ended up happening. Let me know what you guys think of this next stand as well, because I sort of have mixed feelings about it. I get dealt pocket queens in the cutoff. Yes, it seems like I'm playing just premiums this session, but sometimes that's just how this session goes. There's a limp from the low jack, and the hijack is the aggro player from the last hand. He raises to 15, and I 3-bet to 55, and only the player in the hijack calls. So heads up to a flop, which is pretty good for us, guys. It is queen 5-6 with 2 clubs, and we also have a club in our hand. So we have top set plus a redraw for what it's worth. And yeah, it seems like we're flopping all the sets and even boats sometimes in this session, just running really well. And action is now on my opponent. He checks it over to me, and when I flop monsters, I like to check a lot since I have the board locked up. I did decide to check, but I don't think betting can ever be that bad. But we do block some like flush draws he can have since we have the queen of clubs, so I also don't think checking is horrible. You could probably go either way. Anyways, the turn comes the 3 of clubs, so it does complete the flush. Not the card I really wanted to see, but we're still happy about our hand here. And this time my opponent decides to bet. Unsurprisingly, he makes it pretty big. He bets 95, and as is the case with many hands in this session, I take the more passive route and I just called. I think this should be a raise. This reminds me of the pocket 9s hand that I played in the Hamul Casino vlog, and I don't really want to think about that hand ever, but I think I should raise in this spot. Anyways, as played once again, we are going to a river card. It is the 9 of clubs, and although I make my flush, I am not super happy to see this. I mean, if he checks here, then I'm happy to check and take my showdown value, but he doesn't check. He decides to shove for 222, and I know in the last hand, I was saying that this opponent likes to play aggro and bet big and put people in tough spots, but I think in this situation, when there's 4 to a flush on board, people generally tend to play pretty face up here, and I have the 3rd nuts, but I don't know if that really matters. I mean, is he going to be shoving here without at least the king of clubs? Not sure. Obviously, this player wasn't afraid to make moves, but this is just an unfortunate run out, and I was kind of in a weird spot. I ultimately decided to fold, and I'm going to be completely honest, guys. I have no idea whether this was like a nitty thing to do or like if it was totally standard. I just don't think he's going to be, well, I don't think most players are going to be shoving here without the king of clubs or the ace of clubs. And then shoving here with a bluff just seems like suicide. But I decided to fold. By the way, guys, after me and this opponent played a couple hands against each other, we started talking. His name is Charles, and he was a really cool dude, and definitely a lot of fun to play with, and a good change of pace from the typical passive play style that a lot of people have. Nice hand. Do you have anything to say for the vlog, bro?
You can't just wish for aces. You have to wish for aces that are good.
And
like
you got
genie in a bottle.
Nice.
Aces that win.
There's an early position limp. and Charles raises to $15. I have ace-jack suited in the low jack, and I decide to just flat with this hand. I think sometimes you could 3-bet it, but I'm just going to call in position. The big blind and the limper end up making the call as well, so we're going to a flop 4 ways. It's another good one for us, guys. It is 4-4 jack with 2 diamonds. We've got top pair, top kicker on a pretty dry board, and once action checks to me, I decide I'm going to bet here. I make it $25, and Charles does not slow down with the aggression, guys. He check raises to 75, and everyone else folds except me. I end up making the call, obviously. The turn, guys, is a great card for us. We've got a boat once again because it comes the jack of spades. We just continue to run just super well today, and once Charles bets $21 into a pot of like 200, I am definitely going to raise it here for value. I make it 100. Probably could go even bigger here since I could consider his bet to essentially be just a check. I could probably bet like 120, 130, something like that. But doesn't really matter because he ends up folding and we just take down this hand. Not a super interesting one, but it just goes to show how well the session was going. Yeah, just a fun one to include, especially since this vlog was kind of cut short and there aren't too many hands. But you guys will see more about that later on. Guys, I can't make this up. In the next hand, I get dealt pocket aces. If you guys ever play against me, just always fold because I only play premiums, apparently. There is one limp, and the player in the hijack, who is the player in the one pocket queen's hand where it seemed like he was trying to angle me, raises to $20. I'm going to 3-bet here for value, and I make it 75. This is a little bit bigger than I normally go, but I bet large here because I think this opponent's going to overcall. I remember throughout the session, he was pretty much calling every 3-bet as long as he was the pre-flop aggressor or even if he was just involved early on. So I think he's going to overcall here, and I honestly think I could have even gone bigger to like 90 or something. But he ends up making the call, and we are going to a flop heads up. It is 7, Queen, King, Rainbow. Nothing really to be afraid of here except maybe like King, Queen. And once my opponent checks it over to me, I put out a half pot size bet of 75, and he ends up calling. This kind of goes against what I said earlier about betting large because I think he overcalls. I probably should just bet big here, like 120 or something. We're going to a turn card, and it is the 8 of hearts. Probably shouldn't have changed much. He checks to me once again, and he only has about $200 left in the stack, so we are just going to get the money in here. I put him all in, and he kind of side calls, but does so pretty quickly, and I'm probably good in this spot. So we are just hoping for a clean river card. I have aces. Yeah. It is the 7 of diamonds, and our hand ends up winning against Queen, Jack of hearts. So he had middle pair and then turned to flush draw, which was lucky for us since that is the reason he called, and we're going to take this pot down.
Okay, buddy.
Sorry?
You're filming the hands. You have a flop or something?
DogeBag. You know, like Dogecoin?
You're coming right now?
It's just DogeBag. Yeah. Alright guys, I mentioned earlier that the vlog doesn't have too many hands, and that is because pretty soon the floor actually asked me to stop filming. They actually thought I was someone else because the floorman thought he had told me this before, but the last time I was here was like 4 years ago, and I had never been asked to stop filming, so I guess I just look like a lot of people or something. But they were very professional about it, and I get that it's a policy at most casinos that you're not supposed to film. So I ended up leaving and ending the session pretty soon after this, but I did sneak in a few extra hands, as you'll soon see. And on the bright side, since I'm leaving early, I can just enjoy Vegas for a bit and just take a break from poker. We've only got a couple more, guys. I get dealt a pocket pair. Once again, it is pocket 9s, and I am in the small blind. There is a limp, a raise to 15 from the hijack, and a call from the cutoff. This is a perfect spot to squeeze, so I make it $65, and the hijack ends up making the call. So we're going to a flop, which comes 4, 6, Jack, Rainbow. All in all, a decent flop for us, and I actually decide to bet small here for value. I make it $50, which is about a third pot bet, and my opponent makes a call. The turn comes the 6 of diamonds pairing the board, and I think with pocket 9s in this spot, you can kind of go either way. I do have showdown value, but at the same time, I don't really want to see an overcard roll off and put me in a weird spot. But there also aren't really that many draws on the board, so I could check, but then betting also allows me to keep representing like over pairs, you know, top pair, things like that. Ultimately, I leaned towards betting, and I made it 125, and my opponent folds. So we end up taking this one down too. And yeah, nothing super duper crazy in this session, just like a few big hands, and we're just running really well. There's nothing really remarkable about any of the hands we've played. If anything, I actually think I played pretty poorly this session and just made a lot of mistakes that were just like me playing too passively or just making a weird decision. But some days you just run really well. The Wynn has always treated me really well, and yeah, we're having a great session. One last hand for you guys before we end the session. I'm in the hijack, and I've got pocket 8s. The Under the Gun +2 player opens to $15. He's the player from the hand where I had queens and he acted out of turn. And he was a super nice guy. He was from another country and just visiting Vegas to play some poker. So no harm done. Sometimes people just accidentally act out of turn, and it's all good and friendly vibes at the table. I decide to call with my pocket 8s, and the big blinds comes along as well. By the way, guys, I don't have this hand on camera because the floor I think was nearby and I didn't want to pull out my phone after they had just asked me to stop filming. So going to a flop 3 ways, it comes down 7, ace 6, 3 diamonds, and both players end up checking to me. And because the pre-flop aggressor checked, I decided I was going to take a stab here and try to protect my hand a bit. The board's a bit scary, and I imagine the pre-flop aggressor would have bet if he had an ace, so I'm just going to try to take a stab. And once I bet 30, only the player in early position calls, so we're going to a turn card heads up, and it is the ace of spades. He checks to me again, and I decide I'm going to continue showing strength here. The ace makes it a little bit less likely that he was calling on the flop with an ace, and just going to put a little bit more pressure still, especially on a scary board like this where, as I mentioned earlier, people tend to play pretty straightforward. So once I bet 65, my opponent ends up making the call once again, which is not what we like to see, kind of putting him on a pair plus flush draw, or maybe even an ace. The river is the queen of diamonds, so pretty scary card for both of us, I'd imagine, unless he does have a flush here. But he checks it over to me, and I guess at the time I simply thought he was weak, and I thought I could get him off his hand. Don't really know how I feel about it in hindsight, to be honest. It looks like I'm just spewing off my stack, but I ended up betting 110 here, apparently, and my opponent folds. So we actually take this one down with pocket 8s, and I imagine we weren't good, so I'm happy to see that. And in fact, he does show the ace of hearts. So he did have trips, and it ended up working out for us, but don't really think I like this play long term. I imagine if I'm doing this in this spot, I'm probably doing it a little bit too much, but that was what I ended up doing at the time, and this was the last interesting hand of the session. We ended up racking up, and it was a very solid session overall. Didn't even play that well, but sometimes you just run really well, and it seemed like I just got good hands and was able to get a little bit of value from them each time. Probably lost value in a lot of spots, but I will gladly take a win every day of the week. I initially bought in for $500, and I ended up cashing out for $11.91 for a $691 profit in just under 5 hours. Good luck.
It looks like a great treat.
Yeah. All right, everyone's live.
I didn't expect you out.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Oh, that's a fair flop.
Oh! Wow. Did not expect to see that. Raise all in. Alright guys, unfortunately the dealer said I couldn't film there. They were professional about it, they didn't kick me out or anything like that, but since I can't record the hands, I might as well end the session. I was gonna end the session pretty soon anyway, so it was actually good timing. The only hand I completely missed was the last hand I played, which was when I had, this music's kind of loud, but this is cool. The last hand I played, I had 8s, he showed an ace, so he had trips. But anyways, finished up the session. I cashed out for $11.92, which makes for a $692 profit. So pretty good session. We're now up maybe like 450 or so on the trip. And it's only about 7:30ish right now, so early end to the day, at least in terms of poker. So now I can just eat and just enjoy Vegas. Alright guys, I am in the Venetian self-parking structure. Treasure Island is actually a little closer, and I saw that they had free parking as well, but I don't mind a little extra scenic walk in Vegas when it's so early. So yeah, I'm gonna be just walking down the strip, and I'm pretty sure I already know where I want to eat for dinner. Okay guys, that's the end of the vlog. I wasn't able to film a proper outro the day of because I was just busy. The next vlog should be of the last 2 sessions that I played in Vegas. So the day after this one was the last day, and then I left the next day, but I played like a short session before leaving. And I think both sessions were pretty short. So I'm probably gonna combine them, and then I'll be done with the Vegas vlogs, and I can finally move on to present day stuff. I didn't really like this vlog because it was really not any interesting spots, and it was just me running really well. And it would be cool if I was running well and it was like massive pots or something like that, but that was not the case. But I'm not gonna omit the vlog just because it wasn't that interesting. So the next vlog should be a little more interesting because it's 2 sessions, and I'm pretty sure the hands are a little more fun. But after that, I can finally move on to present day stuff. I have a few more poker rooms I want to go to pretty soon for content, so that should be fun. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one regardless, and yeah, I'll see you in the next vlog. Peace.